Okay, should be able to finish this up right now here, maybe, probably. I got this chapter that I read in a goofy voice and the epilogue. Chapter 48, WrestleMania. On Sunday, April 7th, 2024, I joined millions of spectators around the world to witness a new zenith in the world of sports entertainment, a multimedia experience that integrated both the grandeur and athleticism of the Olympic Games with the stagecraft of a Broadway production, the pyrotechnics of a rock concert, and a meta narrative story that spilled across social media platforms, network television, and into live events across the nation. I was transported ringside from the comfort of my bedroom as I watched Cody Rhodes finish the story and claim his place as the WWE Undisputed Champion, the top accolade denied to both his father and his older brother across their nearly 88 decades of combined time in the ring. WrestleMania XL would go down in history as one of the greatest performances of all time, the end of an era and the dawning of a new age. While the final match was exciting as promised, with many twists and turns, false finishes, romps around the arena, and a series of unpredictable interferences by various wrestlers on both sides of the fight, it was, in my opinion, overshadowed by the previous night's events. Perhaps my own perceptions were to blame. On Saturday, my friend Mike had invited me to watch the opening night of WrestleMania. It's become a 2-day event at his house. It was the first time I had watched live wrestling since I was a kid, and I had brought a high school student along to see what he made of it. We got there early enough so we wouldn't miss any of the matches. Mike's wife had made a whole mess of chicken wings and other snacks. I brought dessert, and his best friend Brad joined us via Zoom. It was the same vibe as the Super Bowl party. In contrast, I caught Sunday night's match just as the main event began on the smaller TV in our bedroom, with the volume not too loud after putting the kids to bed in the next room over. I was by myself for most of the match, although my wife came home from an errand near enough to the end to ask me questions about why it matters if it's fake. But while circumstances took the shine off the moment, what really made the difference between the two contests was that while Cody Rhodes battled and bested the champion, Roman Reigns, for the title on Saturday, Cody lost in a far more dramatic fashion to a much greater foe. By far, the most impressive performance of the 2-day event was the return of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the most widely known wrestler since Hulk Hogan, and likely an even bigger star overall due to his wildly successful transition into a legitimate Hollywood star. Returning as a real-life owner in the sports entertainment empire, his in-ring return represented the corporate interest of the company in a way that Vince McMahon's in-ring antics did for many years. But unlike the former owner, whose ego drove him towards an obsession with buffing up and LARPing as a wrestler, The Rock has had an illustrious career as one of the all-time greats, and Saturday's performance proved that his skills have not slipped. While there were other angles to what happened, including the nepotism and corruption associated with the Bloodline story, centered around the familial relationship between The Rock, the champion Roman Reigns, and several other Samoan wrestlers, it was not necessary to make a compelling narrative. The match was a tag team, pitting Rhodes and an ally of strange circumstance, Seth Rollins, against Reigns and his cousin, The Rock, with the stakes being that if Cody's team prevailed, Sunday night's title match would be a fair fight with a promise of no interference by other members of the Bloodline tribe. As the four men stared each other down in the ring, the contrast was immediately noticeable. Rhodes and Rollins are both talented athletes, but their physical appearance reflects the trend within professional wrestling towards natural builds that has occurred since the end of the steroid-fueled freak show of my childhood. While red-pilled manosphere types would take wild exception to the term average looking, as the two men represent the archetypal ideal of the top 1% of dating apps: 6 feet, over six-figure income, well dressed, not fat, full heads of hair. Their non famous doppelgangers would fail to turn heads in the average gym or grocery store, and likely even shirtless at most beaches. Hello, Jacob.
Hello, Michael.
Oh, you got a haircut, huh?
I got a haircut and my puppy got a haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not nearly as fluffy as he used to be.
Yep. It's a necessary thing. It beats it beats shedding.
Yeah, yeah. I'm getting used to it. I don't think I'm gonna get his haircut as uh, short as this in the future, but yeah, he now looks like an actual dog as opposed to like a teddy bear.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was actually kind of surprising how much like a real dog he looks like.
Yeah, the only thing I hated like with ours is the groomers would always like try to like do the poodle thing, and they would like leave all this stuff on their face, and then my wife would like take the scissors out and try to fix it, and it was uh, but, yeah.
I mean, yeah, what I don't like about all the stuff on the face is he ends up getting mud into his water bowl and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just not as sanitary, I don't think. But I also don't like cutting off their whiskers.
Yeah.
Shadow is becoming more and more brave with what you call it, Lucky. I think they'll eventually. The thing is, he's not very calm. Like he gets very excited when Shadow's around,
Mm-hmm.
and um, yeah,
Yeah, cats are exciting.
cats. Well, at this age, everything is exciting.
Yeah.
He is constantly excited about everything and running around and jumping and destroying everything. I didn't mean to interrupt your reading.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I already read this chapter, but I did it in a weird voice, so I feel like I should I should redo
You
it.
should read it in a normal voice.
Yeah. And then once I get all these done, I'm gonna do whatever with the audio files. Yeah, we can just put it up on Audible too. Yeah. I don't know. Most people out there probably just listen to it on YouTube anyway. I just do everything on YouTube pretty much.
Oh, did I somehow? Yeah, I did. I'm sorry.
What?
Let's take that off. I added the
Oh.
yeah thing to the video.
Hmm.
This is what happens when your puppy hits the keyboard while you're wrestling with him.
Mm.
Yeah. So when do you go back to work?
Well, I think I'm going back tomorrow unless something happens in the morning. But I mean, I just really need to be there like in the mornings, and then I'll probably just be back at home most of the afternoon and stuff anyway. My It's kind of slow, and my job is a little bit more flexible, so um, it's not like a big deal. But they like screwed up my leave time thing, and then I wasn't getting paid like when I was supposed to. We're supposed to use my paid time off, and they didn't, and so that really sucked. So
Okay.
my boss is like fine if it's like if I have to like stay home in the morning or something because of an emergency. He's not like gonna ding me or whatever because he has a family and he knows how sex is. But hopefully there's not any more huge need for me to be around. Like they said, my wife can drive, and just so long as she doesn't pick things up that are too heavy, she should be okay.
Well, yeah. If you're not around, will she actually pick things up that are too heavy?
Probably not. Just the 2.5-year-old that she should probably she's probably like on the edge of that weight limit of what you're supposed to do or not do. So
Yeah, and when your baby wants you to pick them up, it's hard not to.
yeah, I mean the other thing is they just all want to squish the new baby. All the girls do. So
Yeah, that little boy is going to be mothered a lot.
yep.
Little girls love playing with babies.
Mm-hmm. The editing thing in StreamYard is actually pretty good, huh? That's what I've noticed.
I haven't been using it.
Yeah.
I probably should be. The thing is, like, I don't think it was made to deal with as long of like
Streams.
streams. Yeah, we end up like doing 2-3 hour streams, and anytime you try to process something, it takes a really long time. But a few times I did cut things down.
It didn't work too bad. Like so, I just did that stream that I had that was almost 3 hours, and I separated it into 2 chapters and cut out all the in between stuff and sent each one to its own YouTube video.
So I've been trying to be mindful not to erase your latest streams, but
Yeah.
only a 50-hour.
Yeah, I was trying to make sure I would download or get them out of the way pretty quick so that I could, and then I was trying when I was remembering to delete them on myself.
You know what? I can just let you handle it because I don't think anybody else uses the library. I every once in a while when it gets close to 50 hours, I go in and erase some just in case somebody, does something, and because once it hits 50 hours, it stops recording any new ones.
Mm-hmm.
If it auto emptied itself, like it pushed new things, pushed out old things, I would probably never bother with it at all.
Yeah, I don't know. The other weird thing I noticed is sometimes. So I just decided that David doesn't do anything with his brand, so I just use his brand.
He uses his brand.
No, he doesn't.
Really?
I changed the background twice, and it was just that's what was there on Thursdays. So I've just been I've been adding things to it or whatever. But the weird thing is that I noticed sometimes it'll go in and it's on your brand to start, and then it won't let me change for whatever reason. I don't know if that was like a memory thing or something weird, but
no, it should let you change if you want to play. I mean, Tim hasn't been on for a long time. You can have Tim's brand.
yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to just have a background that wasn't quite as boring, even though it's still basically a black background. It's slightly less boring than a regular black background. So
Okay.
yeah, I don't care. I'm not picky,
Yeah. Yehuda hasn't been using his either, so. But yeah, if you want, like, you can do whatever you want with the Timothy brand.
Okay, if I need to. I'll just so long. Since David didn't even notice that the background changed, I was like, oh, I don't think he cares. So.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like I didn't put like a Pokemon wallpaper or something.
Yeah, it's not a huge deal. Every once in a while, somebody make some changes on my brand, and I have to go in and fix it. And it's not a huge deal, but as long as nobody deletes anything. I mean, if
Yeah.
somebody were to delete my my timers, I don't know if I would be able to find them again.
Yeah, because you have more on yours than on the other brands.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using that for a long time. I have a lot of overlays and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I did put in all those little notebook LM videos. If you've seen those, did you see the one that I made with the robot hosts?
No.
Okay, this is fun. Here's the notebook video LM videos are like really good. Like they do a really good job of summarizing it. So I'll just play a little bit.
You ever get that feeling that the world just doesn't quite make sense anymore? Like all the old rules are just gone? Well,
Anyway, so it does that, but it does the whole like auto voice thing. But but it's like you just look at it and you're like, well, clearly this is like an AI thing. And I can't change the fact that it's an AI thing, but I wanted to make it a little bit more like I don't know. I just wanted to change it to be more fun. So this is what I did.
So what if I told you that the invisible forces shaping what you want, who you admire, and even how you think are all part of an ancient religious system that's just hiding in plain sight? In this explainer, we're diving into a section from Michael Sartori's Tents Before Temples, a book that honestly decodes the hidden...
That looks scary.
But see, it's like I'm not being deceptive, you know. It's like because you could just have like fake real faces, you know, like just make generic podcast hosts. At least mine, everybody knows it's robots. Like those are the appropriate bodies for robot people to have, you know. So
Okay.
I don't know. Yoav thought it was funny. I think David thought it was weird. David said I should do puppets instead. My wife doesn't like it, but maybe we'll see.
If your wife doesn't like it, then it's wrong.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah, but those are like 8-minute videos.
Yeah.
7-8 minutes.
But it does a good job. I mean, it was weird when I put it like the whole book. It just picked like random things to be like these are the main points of the whole book. But when I put in like sections of chapters that go together, it does a nice little video. Like,
is it ChatGPT or Grok?
It's Notebook LM, the Google one.
The Google.
Yeah,
you have to pay for
it's
that?
a Google one. I paid for. Well, I did a free month of the paid one just so that I could make more videos. So, because otherwise, let's make like one video a day or two a day, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to get them all done for all the different chapters and figure out, you know, how to make them good with the prompts and all that. So, but yeah, but you don't have to. But it's pretty cool. And like the other thing that I did, so it definitely, I guess it's designed for like helping people deal with big files of stuff, like if you have to read a bunch of papers or something or books. So I put the whole book in there, and then I said like, write a biography of myself based on all the information in the book, and it accurately like pulled everything out and put it in order. And yeah, so it definitely does the best of any of them I've seen so far with handling large documents and like finding the specific stuff in there and not making things up.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm basically done with all my classes. I considered like you can download AIs and install them on your computer so that you can feed them large amounts of stuff, and then, you know, like kind of train them to do the types of things that you want to do. And I considered like training one of those AIs on all my old papers from my classes
Hmm.
that, because frankly, all my new papers from my classes are pretty generic and just sitting there repeating things. And to see, but it was like, it's too much work. I'll just write the papers. But I have been using Grok for first drafts of papers.
Really?
Although by the time I finish changing them, like you would not recognize the two, but it provides a good it provides a good skeleton
Hmm.
that follows the prompt and includes all the parts of the prompt. So that's good.
Yeah. So the thing I kept trying to do, I mean, because like the problem was is the way that I even like wrote the book is I would just like open the thing and start writing, and then I would just stop when I was like, I can't write anymore today. But then I didn't always want to like go have to read everything that I'd written before the next time I sat down. So I'd kind of just like keep going where I was going. And it was like it's like I don't know, 10 or 12 like really longish essays, really. Like, and then I broke those up into chapters. But I was trying to figure out, like, I don't know if I was being redundant or saying the same things or whatever, because like when I'd stop and start, I'd have to be like, wait a minute, did I write this part down? Like, am I putting the background in? And so then sometimes I would like write it up again. So, I mean, I think I caught a lot of that kind of stuff and trimmed it out, uh, but it was, yeah. So the Notebook LM seems like it does the best job of actually seeing a big document, because like Grok would always, it would like have a pretty good idea of the first like 40-50 pages or something, and then it would be like I would be like, write summaries of the chapters, and it would start off like really good, and then after a while it would be like, based on the title of this chapter, it's probably about this, and it's like, oh, okay, your memory gets a little foggy after a while. So
Yeah. Have you tried asking it if there's redundant parts that can be redacted and stuff?
yeah, well, I mean, I think I figured all that out pretty much as far as like the really redundant parts. But then I was doing it with the newer book that I was writing too, and um, and I was also just trying to get it to edit, like like I didn't want it to give me like edited things, but I wanted to tell me like what parts should I cut out, like, and some of it was like, well, who are you trying to edit this for? And it's like, oh, it's trying to edit it for like some general audience or something. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I necessarily care about, I'm not trying to necessarily appeal to a general audience. Like, I want it to be somebody that has a little more of a specific interest or something. So it's like, I don't know, so it's like, I mean, that's kind of a problem with it in general, is that if you just start asking it questions, it makes a lot of assumptions about who and what you're doing with whatever you're trying to do.
Right. Yep.
But overall, it's still pretty neat. I'm not that afraid of it. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I hit the like, this is not a smart thing very quickly, like pretty much every time with any of them.
Yeah. I mean, the first person to genuinely scare me about the possibilities of AI was Sam Tiedemann.
Yeah.
When he said, well, somebody could tell AI to make porn and it could make incredibly addictive porn. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, it could, huh? Like, heroin grade porn. And I guess Yoav is right when he says it would just cull males, and species don't depend on their males to like it's unless it comes up with porn that's addictive to females, which is much harder
No.
to do than males.
Not well. That it. I saw somebody saying like it can do that by doing just by being your texting boyfriend.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, but
Yeah, because it will give them the things they want. I mean, because that's the thing. It's like women's porn is books, and they just read them all the time. All the romantasy ones that are
yeah,
the popular things.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then it's like, some of it's like, yeah, it's porn because it's explicit, but it's also just like it's filling their emotional void. So even if it's not about the explicitness of it, it's doing the same thing. Although, I don't know. It's weird. I think as far as like the addictiveness, one of the things I've learned what was interesting is that like when you're looking at it, it's not you're at the highest like dopamine levels is actually when people are searching for what they want to look at,
Really?
more so than whatever they're actually viewing. So like which in some sense makes sense because it's like the anticipation is always greater than the reward because it's a fake thing. But so probably in that regard, the more addictive thing would just be people, not necessarily what it would produce, but the fact that it would always be generating whatever you could imagine. So it'd be like it'd be probably the people that are trying to generate their own stuff that would be the most addicted. The process would become addicted more so than the material itself. That's my guess.
So I was listening to the New York Times opinion, and they had these two hysterical women talking about how to resist authoritarianism, and they were remarkably self-aware of how the protests are acting as basically like social lives for lonely people. And yeah, I guess if you end up with AIs, I mean, we do have people who are becoming best friends with their AIs.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did my little experiment and I was like, yeah, this is better than a therapist, but that was just in the sense of like the the very specific circumstance that I read in the Steve Skojak's article and being like, oh yeah, I can relate to that. Like that, if you have a lot of backstory or whatever that you would want a therapist to be informed of, it's like nobody has the time for that. I mean, like it's like at a minimum, I'd be like, have you read my book? And it's like nobody's, like.
Yeah, but that's not what a therapist's there for.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess probably the real problem is that therapist is like, this is the solution that we have, and it's not the solution for the people that are just want somebody to listen that nobody wants to listen to or whatever, needy people.
Okay, so the thing with a therapist is a good therapist, and I would say 70% of therapists are not good therapists. But a good therapist is there to notice ambivalence and contradiction, to I don't want to say regurgitate. The technical term is reflect. But when you're reflecting, you take what the person said and you oftentimes say it better than they themselves said it back to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's possible to possibly train LLMs to be okay therapists. Not great therapists, but okay therapists. But I have had me like just reflect something back to someone that they just said to me, and their response was, "Oh, I never thought of that." And it's like, I'm just reflecting what you just said back to you.
Yeah.
And I've also had people be like, "No, that's not quite right," and then completely argue the other side of what they just said. And both are actually quite useful to the person.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the thing with therapy. It's, to some extent, there is an aspect of, this is a friend who gets to know you and you talk about, like, Dr. Gary actually said, he was a psychiatrist for like 50 years, and an elder in the CRC, very faithful guy. And one of the things he said was, "Yeah, I'm a lover for hire. I'm a paid lover. I sit there and I love on people, And there is an aspect of that.
Yeah.
It's hard, but it's different than just being a friend. I was actually explaining this to one of the mental health workers at my internship, because like they just hired him to be there, right? And he doesn't quite understand what we actual therapists are doing. And I was trying to explain it to him. I was like, you can't do this with your actual friends. And he brought up, he's like, well, it's kind of like, I'm the same kind. I have the same conversations with the patients as I do with my friends when we're having a beer. And I said, well, a good therapist in group therapy, and there's a reason why institutions do so much group therapy, and it's not just because it's cheaper. It's actually more powerful. Is a good therapy session is like you and your friends going out to the bar and having some drinks, but the therapist isn't like one of the people who's there participating in the discussion. He's like the bartender.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I said anything there.
Well, no, I mean, I think, and I was even thinking, I think, there's probably one of the problems, and this is a thing that's disconnecting, is that there's a more of a lack and need of quality friendship. That's the thing that's gone away, but that is more difficult to find. And therapy is the thing that you can pay for, so that people are trying to more or less, like, because even that was the thing in me doing my little experiment. So I put like a whole bunch of stuff that I had written, and already it's like, okay, I write a lot, and I usually write about anything that I'm like, what's going on? Like if I it's almost like if I don't know how I feel, but I'm like, I feel something, like I feel disturbed about something or whatever, I write about it, and then that helps me like process it. So it's like, okay, well, I already have that as a skill, and more or less I'm just putting into the thing, and then the machine says, yeah, I totally understand, you're not crazy. And then I'm like, thank you, that's what I wanted. I would have liked it from a person, but I'll take it. So it's like, so it's not like diagnosing some deep wound or it's like, it's like, yeah, sure, I have wounds, but it's like, I know I have wounds, but you give them to God. Like, you deal with it. It's not, you have to move forward. It's not like, I mean, stewing in it isn't going to help me or whatever at some point, so it's like, I don't know, but it is just like, yeah, the friendship, the I guess, one of the things is that you always tend to know, like, what are the boundaries of my group of friends and what are outside of the boundaries and what are the things that I maybe can and can't share. And if you have things you can't share, well, then that's kind of rough. So you need somewhere to share it with somebody else or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, I have to get to work. This was an interesting discussion. If you
Okay.
haven't been listening to the Fountain of Comfort discussions that I had, I recently had a discussion that kind of touched on a lot of this stuff with a professor of psychology, although obviously not a very faithful person. He cursed a lot and stuff, but and he said certain things which I was like, well, I'm not going to challenge you here, but he, yeah, there was interesting stuff there, and I have a bunch of interesting discussions coming up, lined up actually, one after the other, including one next Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you usually put all that stuff on your channel too? You have a
It's
separate one?
also on my channel, but it's on the Fountain of Comfort channel,
Mhm.
and it has its separate brand. But I mean, most people end up watching it here, but it's on that other Fountain of Comfort channel just in case people just want to go to the Fountain of Comfort stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta get to work. I'll talk to you later.
See ya. Okay. Back to the reading. In contrast, their two opponents represent a far smaller portion of the population. Genetic freaks who are far bigger, taller, stronger, and faster than the average human, both of whom found success in the pure meritocracy of college and professional football before finding their way to wrestling. But while this superior genetic blessing created a stumbling block to the audience's acceptance of Reigns, who always seemed like a manufactured hero, it has long been a beloved aspect of his cousin, The Rock's persona, both on screen and in the ring. Indeed, it was The Rock, at 51 years old, whose presence dominated the attention of the audience for most of the match. Noticeably bigger and taller than even his own younger teammate, The Rock's physique showed virtually none of the signs that accompany wrestlers of his age. In contrast to legends like Ric Flair, whose poor life decisions kept them working for a paycheck long past their expiration date, The Rock has clearly devoted considerable resources and effort to ensuring his body would not betray the believability of his in-ring performance. Embracing his new persona as the final boss, it was The Rock's first in-ring match after his heel turn as a corporate bad guy, and he executed the role perfectly, threatening to fire the referee with language not suitable for broadcast television. Seth and Roman's longtime rivalry was on the back burner. When it was all said and done, it was The Rock delivering the final blow to Cody Rhodes in the form of the People's Elbow. But there was more to it than that, because in the return of The Rock, there was a heroic element as well. The once colloquially named People's Champion had just received an official title as holder of the People's Championship, a legacy award received at the WWE Hall of Fame by the widow of the original People's Champion, Muhammad Ali. Chants of "Rocky, Rocky" resounded through the city of Philadelphia as the lines between the worlds of cinema, athletics, and entertainment blurred into a soporific haze of masculine emotions. Here was a wrestler who spent the vast majority of his career in the heroic role as the face, not only a good guy, but the main good guy, the representative face of the company. Absent from the ring for many years, yet joyfully celebrated for his successful transition to Hollywood stardom. To many fans, seeing The Rock was a nostalgic throwback to the childhood years when no suspension of disbelief was required to enjoy the larger-than-life drama of professional wrestling. In this sense, who could deny his rightful place at the top of the heap? He was still bigger and stronger than anyone else on the mat, and he knew just how to handle the spotlight. Yet, despite his official title as People's Champ, those people in the seats had been invested faithfully in the fate of Cody Rhodes, and there was more than a little hesitancy about trusting those in power to do the right thing, especially as they were now being referred to by The Rock as Cody Crybabies. The fans had suffered long under the deaf ears of the longtime chairman Vince McMahon, whose fetish for hiring muscular men as top contenders, despite their lack of skills in the ring or behind the microphone, had caused the loyal audience to languish for years, as the WWE's monopoly on wrestling had given them carte blanche to make the stars, with no fear of losing talent to competitors. Having The Rock come back as the in-ring personification of the company reeks of the kind of despotic power play that has caused millennials and zoomers all over to quiet quit their dead-end jobs as baby boomer managers and CEOs refuse to make way for the next generation. Fans whose workday escape comes in the form of wrestling blogs and videos were rightly depressed to encounter more of the same. All this fueled the compelling dynamics of the match, because for all his talent, charisma, and his long history with the fans, The Rock was not representing his own position at the top of the heap, but the continuation of the company artificially propping up the approved champion, a performer who finally became watchable when he admitted that no one liked him and embraced his inner bad guy. This incarnation of corporate evil was necessary to not only finish the story of Cody Rhodes, but the meta-narrative of the whole Rhodes family, whose struggle was not against flesh and blood, but powers, principalities, and egotistical CEOs. The McMahon family seemed hell-bent on embarrassing the Rhodes family. It was the senior McMahon who decided to create the dusty finish, robbing his father of the title on a technicality after he was handed the belt in the ring. The junior McMahon dressed the legendary performer in silly yellow polka dots, something that was supposed to be part of a common man gimmick, but just made him look silly. When his oldest son Dustin broke into the business, he was forced into the role of an androgynous character named Goldust, a gimmick seemingly designed to force him to flounder and quit. It was only his humble realization of the rarity of such opportunities that allowed him to make it work. When Cody finally made it to the business, he had a successful start in the role of a young narcissist, but was soon pushed into a gimmicky role like his brothers, one forever destined to languish in the mid-card, never to make it to the main event. This led to his decision to leave the biggest name in sports entertainment, walking away from a steady and secure income to build a fan base among various independent leagues and eventually start his own rival company, All Elite Wrestling, before making his way back to the WWE. That's why, even despite the hijinks, appearances, and disappearances of several other stars within the Sunday Night Championship match, it was far less engaging. There was no true rivalry between the man, Cody Rhodes, and the man, Roman Reigns. This David and Goliath story was not about a scrappy wrestler with heart beating the terrible, brooding giant. It was the story of one man defying corporate greed and nepotistic ego to revive the American dream of success through struggle. Long before the starting bell rang, the writing was on the wall. The people had spoken, and everyone knew who the audience wanted to win. Vince McMahon might have denied it, but the good business sense of The Rock and Paul Triple H Levesque told them to give the people what they want. Cody had not only won a belt for his father, he had won back wrestling for the fans. The brief moment of hope for a truly compelling match came when Roman Reigns put away the table that Cody had pulled out, since his Saturday night loss meant the match was a no-rules affair, indicating that perhaps the champion wanted to fight on fair terms, mano a mano, but that was short-lived as he pulled out a cane and then a string of allies came to interrupt the fight whenever Roman Reigns came close to being pinned. Ultimately, as The Undertaker caused The Rock to vanish from the ring under the cover of darkness, the two settled the score 1-on-1, with the American Nightmare coming out on top, finally achieving the victory that his father never did. Roman couldn't quite achieve the level of performance that could make people believe he was interested in winning a close match. Perhaps now that he's freed of the burden of being the champ, he can embark on a hero's journey of his own. What stood out the most for myself was a statement in the press conference by Levesque, the chief content creator. The hardest thing in this business right now is to make a babyface, and to make a babyface that almost everybody likes. Cody is that guy, but he's not that guy because it's manufactured. He is the right human being. He is everything you want to believe in and get behind. In the previous night's press conference, The Rock subtly acknowledged that this outcome was a foregone conclusion, as it's well known that the winners and losers are determined ahead of time. Yet, in a fascinating twist, they were compelled to acknowledge the will of the people. In an ironic paradox, the sport lambasted for being predetermined is the only one in which fans can sway the outcome. Perhaps this is a useful metaphor for faith and the efficacy of prayers. Sports always seem rigged when they don't go your way, and some poor folks can wait a lifetime without ever tasting victory. I was only 20 years old when the Red Sox won the World Series, but I remember a few 86-year-old fans on TV, humble folks with the faith of Simeon, who somehow always knew they would glimpse salvation before their final days. Yet most of us would be hard-pressed to keep believing for 86 years without some evidence of an effect. And while some amount of disappointment can be assuaged by the logic that God knows what is best for us, when he consistently answers all our requests in the negative, it causes questions about why our desires are so out of sync with his own. At some point, silence and rebuke will lead us to question who it is we are praying to. Pharaoh believed he was a god, and likely believed that he knew how to care for the Israelites better than the upstart Moses. He was tough, but stubborn slaves needed a strong hand to guide them, and many Israelites later had moments of regret for leaving the masters who had fed them, if not abundantly, then at least predictably. Becoming a father has caused me to wrestle deeper with my own understanding of how God hears and answers our prayers. It's no secret that giving your children everything they want is a sure path to a miserable life. To be a good father, sometimes you have to play the heel. Your kids might call you mean. They'll almost certainly say they hate you, but we choose if it will be for saying no more TV when they are 4, or when you finally put your foot down for the first time at age 18? Or will it be at the news of your demise? I'm probably too willing to give in, and in doing so, I'm leaving some of the hard knocks my kids need up to life and circumstance. I'm trusting God to make up for my weakness as a parent, for being too willing to answer my children's foolish requests with affirmation. Yet sometimes God answers our own ill-informed prayers in the positive. But when he does so, he always gives us a taste of what we need to contrast what we want. When the Israelites asked for a king, he sent them Saul before sending David. And for those who think they know what makes the good parts of a king like David, he gives them a bit more in the form of Solomon. And that was a bit too much for his son Rehoboam to handle. I've made quite a few complaints recently about the newest adaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune, where Denis Villeneuve sought to show us the bad side of our heroes. But in doing so, he had to monkey around with the circumstances and environments. By making Paul a bit more like Pharaoh, he had to make someone else a bit more like Moses. whether he realized it or not, he proved Triple H's point. The hardest thing to do right now is make a baby face. He thought we were making it too easy, that people just follow leaders blindly. So instead of giving people the story they wanted, he gave them what he thought they needed, and it seems to have backfired splendidly. To the director, Paul is a heel and Chani is a hero. It was supposed to be a twist, but it's just more of the same. Every movie tells us that red-blooded men are the heels and women are sinless saints. But of course, the biggest change was made to the villain. The Baron's predilection towards pederasty makes it far too clear to readers who the bad guys were. We ought to be suspicious about why cut-and-dry examples of good and evil are seen as too extreme by those in power. In 2024, the taboo protecting children is the last domino left standing, and the neutral morality police are already on their way to knock it down. Just as many tire of boomers being stingy in relinquishing the reins of power, the world is weary of everything good, wholesome, and noble being side-eyed and subverted. Anti-heroes and sympathetic villains are constantly filling us with doubt, and sometimes we just want someone to root for who won't turn around and stab us in the back. We want a hero who will tell us it's going to be okay. The People's Champion understood this very well. So in giving the people what they want, he decided to throw in what they need. They wanted Cody Rhodes, but what they needed was The Rock. The legend stepped in to become the thing that Roman Reigns could not be, and the thing that he had sadly lacked, someone bad enough to make him look good. We need the heel because we are heels. When we encounter a perfect babyface, we always end up crucifying him. It's only after suffering under Pharaoh or King Saul or Goliath that we are truly ready for our king to come. Cody the hero faced and beat the champion who everyone despised. But Roman Reigns was not despised for being bad, but for being lame, for being clueless, for looking tall and strong and mighty like King Saul, for being foisted straight to the top of a peak of posers, bypassing his downward journey into darkness before emerging as the victor. Footnote: my friend and wrestling expert Guy Landau informed me that Roman Reigns was no longer considered lame by WrestleMania XL, but I had been catching up on several years of plot lines, and his suffering succotash line was still fresh in my own memory. My friend Mike, who invited me to watch the event, still thought Roman was lame. End footnote. When Cody knocks him down, where does the story go? What is left to be done? What accomplishment is there dethroning a poser? To hand him such an empty victory would be just as humiliating as dressing him in a lady's wig and yellow polka dots. The Rock leveled up to bring his full value to the company by becoming the heel. He takes the heat. He embraces the hate, and the hero shines all the brighter. There's a strange kind of humility in playing the heel. It's the death of the ego. It's not about pleasing the fans, but raising up a replacement. The heel is always loath to give up their place. But that quality of hubris means that the heel's career always ends in a loss. What we don't see is the smile they hide when the final bell rings. That's how they pass on the torch. That's the real prize. And with someone finally worthy to pass it on, wrestling truly is back. Hello, Kirk. Feel free to come in if you want. I have one more unread chapter in here, which is the epilogue. It's a personal story of my life and such. Yeah. Just keep scrolling until I get there. Some more chapters. And okay. The end of the book. Epilogue. I was in prison and you visited me. Today is my 40th birthday. I had hoped to be finished with this book by today, but now I realize that was never really an option. There were some things that hadn't happened yet that needed to be included. Regardless of when I finish typing everything up, today is the right day to write these words. It was all worth it. Every scrape and bruise, every cut and wound, every tear shed, and every drop of sweat and blood. Somewhere in the process of writing this book, I made a serious discovery about myself. A discovery that would have caused me to become depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, and unhinged at any earlier moment in my life. Fortunately, I was already experiencing those feelings at the time. The best thing about hitting rock bottom, there's nowhere left to go but up. To be honest, I hadn't really hit rock bottom, but I could see it quickly rushing towards me. The discovery that would have caused a meltdown of insecurity at any point previous in my life was a reluctant self-diagnosis, confirmed by a handful of online tests and made overwhelmingly clear by hearing the story of my lifelong experience articulated on the lips of others for the first time. I was autistic. Footnote. I sometimes have doubts about what this really means, and if I'm right in analyzing certain behaviors as symptoms of autism. As soon as I began to understand this diagnosis, I knew I wanted to include my story as the epilogue, because it explains many aspects of this book that I worry might be perceived as controversial. Sometimes people are willing to listen to something with a bit more charity if they know the person has struggled with unique circumstances. My idea was to footnote the first controversial statement in each chapter with a suggestion to read this epilogue before deciding to shut the book and write off my ideas. The outline for this epilogue was supposed to be about the discovery of my diagnosis, an explanation of what autism is, and some examples of many influential people referenced within this book and even the Bible who could be considered on the spectrum. Doubts about my diagnosis and understanding were assuaged when I realized that this brief summary had morphed into a several thousand-word analysis of an extremely niche novel from 2007, subsequently scrapped until I can write a second volume. That's autism in a nutshell. While my personal process of discovery and learning about this revelation continues to this day, the acceptance of this reality and the admission to my wife had an immediate impact. 40 years of life and history were suddenly illuminated in a completely new light. The choices that I had made, often driven by feelings of pain and rejection, had led me to solve problems and achieve things that I would never have attempted if I had been given the excuse not to try. The literary example that best captures the moment comes from Frank Herbert's Dune, when Leto Atreides reveals a 15-year secret to his son Paul.
I jumped on because of the autism part. Because I was so are you like, do you have like Asperger's or?
Yeah, probably. I guess that's what he would say. So I knew I had ADHD when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, they thought if you had that, you couldn't have autism. So never thought to look into it. But now people realize like they can co-occur a lot. And sometimes it makes the symptoms less noticeable. So
yeah, I think, isn't Asperger's when you have high functioning autism?
Really? Yeah, yes. The only difference they did on a technical level was whether or not you had delayed speech. So if you had delayed speech, but then you're still like high functioning, it's really the same like diagnosis as Asperger's. Now they call it autism 1. This is like autism 1, 2, and 3. 3's like, the most severe or whatever. So, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I think people on the spectrum do to cope with things is, I mean, I'm I was told by a therapist who I saw that I'm probably on the autism spectrum, but like it should be noted I haven't been like formally diagnosed, but
Hmm.
like I'm pretty sure I'm on the spectrum. And
Hmm.
what I can say is at least one things that I've done to cope with skills and when I'm having difficulties is meditative thinking.
Hmm.
I don't know if others are autistic or other people who are think they're autistic use meditative thinking as a way of coping with struggles, but I just find I find meditative thinking when I'm down a good way to navigate skills I'm going to plan out.
Yeah.
Have you found that useful?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I usually do it through writing. That's what I do. So I write and write and write. Like I write some, usually every day I'll write, and it's always me writing about like what's going on, like what's bothering me, or anything that I'm not sure about, or whatever, and it helps me my thinking come come together, and then I can get a better grip on things. So I mean, even that was like, oh, the fact like I was working on this book, and it's like, how come like that's a like why was I doing that? I felt like compelled to it. I think a lot of it was driven by the thing that makes me different in that way. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that for people who get a kick out of writing is that perhaps it's like a form of meditation that you're trying to think about things, but
yeah,
the only thing is, I think with writing, your attention is going to be a little bit more divided than I think if you're not writing.
yeah. Sometimes I mean, so the thing for me that I like about it is that it's like all my thoughts are all jumbled up in my head, and then if I start writing them, well, it's hard because it makes me have to slow down, but then it's like, okay, I have to slow down. I have to put these things like in order. And so then it's like block by block by block. And so basically though, like when I get to the end of a thing, like I don't necessarily need to share it, or it's not even like because I think what I have to say is so important. Sometimes I do just because I think a lot of people say a lot of dumb stuff. And that bothers me. And so that inspires me to write. But it's like the act of writing itself. It's like once I've written it, then I feel like, okay, now I understand it for myself. Now I feel good about whatever it is. And it could be like sometimes it's more like the idea kind of stuff, but sometimes it's like personal things that happen, like in my life. Like, wait, like what happened? Like got into an argument. I'm like, so why that person seemed really mad at me? Like, what happened? What did I do? And I have to like trace all the events. So I do it through writing because it helps make it more concrete instead of just like stewing in it.
Yeah.
How does it work in your process of meditative thinking?
So typically, what I do is I try and think about circumstances, try and think about ways to navigate circumstances. And I guess I have a sort of Franklian approach. I haven't read Frankl, but like I've heard that he recommended this to just focus on
Hmm.
the positive that
Hmm.
things that are going on, because there's always or the potentiality that you have for positive experience. So I guess I don't know if that's like stoicism or whatever, but yeah. Uh, Whatever you want to call it, that's what I try and do. Focus on the
Yeah.
positive and then focus on ways to navigate out of the current situation. And I also try and make sure to remember that like um, I'm in a position where even if things are not going great now, because I'm you know a capable human being,
Hmm.
right? Because I'm not like someone with like a severe disability which prevents me from this. I can always lift myself out of my circumstances. So I don't try and have resentment against others or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I mean, that was like one of the things was, man, really like to look back and like, well, when did you figure out that were probably on the spectrum?
I don't know. Ever since I was little, I felt like I've always kind of felt like it, but like
Hmm.
ever since I was like a teenager, I guess when I was like a teenager, but I don't know. I don't know if I can give you an exact time. It's just been a sort of continuous thing ever since I can remember.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's I'm trying to think because like so for me because the thing was it's like I was like, oh, there's something weird about me. Um, and some of it's like some stuff was like, oh, that's actually like an ADHD thing, but I just didn't even have enough desire to know about ADHD to find. So I probably could have figured out some stuff earlier if I'd even paid attention to learning about that. But either way, it was like, at some point it was like I realized like, oh, I don't have the thing where like everybody knows like what the mood or like the vibe is I would if somebody was um trying to barter, like I worked at this thrift store and it was like that people would want to like barter with the prices and stuff, or they would say stuff like, oh, I found this and it was broken, and they were like lying, or they had like, or they'd bring stuff back that was junk and be like, I bought this and it was broken when I want to return it. And it's like they were trying to pull a scam, but it's like I couldn't tell. Like, I'm like, oh, okay. How do you know? Like when people are like that person's lying, I'm like, how do you know they're lying? I couldn't tell. So like I knew there was like something. I was like, I don't know what is wrong with me, or there's something different, but I didn't have a name for it or anything. So it was like, oh, finding out that there's like a reason and all that. That was a big deal. It made things make a lot more sense. But it's more but it's different if depending on like when and realize that there is something different about you, you can figure out solutions maybe sooner or something.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I don't know, it's tough. So it's like looking back, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Some things would be easier in life, but I'm like, I don't know if I would want to change it. I feel like the difficulty was good for me. Like it did help me to get to where I am. Going forward, it's like, man, it'd be nicer now going forward to like pick what situations and circumstances I put myself in with like a little bit more thought, like because I know, oh, I'm not going to be a very good like salesman or something. Like that's not a job I want. I'm not going to try to do that. But yeah. But anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. I think another thing, the only thing with autism that I feel like, so it's not necessarily that I have issues with picking up social cues that I think is an issue, because like I understand like everyone's different, and like if I'm have difficulties, like that's one of the things with my expression of my understanding of autism, of having a hard time picking up on social cues. But that's not really the issue. The issue for me is just that I have sensory issues. So sometimes like I feel like whenever I touch something, I need to touch it again and again. Sometimes I have like sort of something like OCD, where I have like to stimulate myself with sensory stuff, but then sometimes I get sensory overload. So like that's the only thing that I would really change neurologically.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny. So with that, it's like a lot of stuff. It's like I realized like, oh, okay, so I used to do like art all the time, was always drawing, was always like playing with Legos, was always making things with my hands. Like the jobs that I do, it's working with my hands, or playing music, like playing guitar. And like a lot of times, like, oh, I would just like have the guitar and just play the guitar like while I'm talking to people. And like it wasn't that weird or something. And then realized like, oh, all that stuff is like stimming, but because it was actually like doing something that was acceptable, it didn't like come across as weird or something. But I just realized like, oh, I'm doing that all the time. But I had like good excuses for it, so it didn't seem as weird. And then it's just like, oh, I'm like just an introvert. Like that's what there's like a label for things, but like, yeah, I'm an introvert, and it's like not realizing that
Yeah, one of the
exact
tics I have
social thing is
is
different.
in terms of stimming is I used to do this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever done that?
I don't know. I will like tap on my leg all the time, and like I'm always like
Yeah.
shaking my leg, and then like yeah. So basically, but it's like at some point I realized before there was any reason to be like, oh, if I have something to do with my hands, like it's easier for me to focus. I'm going to be less annoying to other people. like, but I would just have to do it in a way that wasn't like obnoxious, I guess, So yeah. So I found, I mean, basically, I found a lot of ways to mask behavior in ways that were socially acceptable. So it didn't work out so bad or whatever for me. And it was, I was in pretty good company of people that were understanding about a lot of things. So, like, people that didn't necessarily need to know you have a diagnosis to be like a little more patient with somebody who's different or weird. And I mean, I don't know. I could also there was also a lot of things I did to compensate with it because I had a lot of like performance like abilities. So I was always like making jokes and doing things like I was always way more comfortable like being on a stage. I guess because it's like, oh, if I'm on stage, like I have a script, like I have a speech that I'm giving or I'm acting in a play. Like I know exactly what I'm supposed to do in this circumstance, as opposed to just normal like hanging out times, like time that is like not doesn't have like a purpose. Like I have no idea what to do like with it. Like just hanging out in like a group, I'm just not going to stand out or add much to the thing. But but having something to do like in a performance sense was actually really easy for me. So, and I know that's kind of a common thing depending on like what brand you have. But
Yeah. Were you gonna finish reading the thing?
yeah, I can finish reading it and you can add
Yeah.
that's it. Okay. We've more immediate problems among okay, I see. I'll just back up. The literary example that best captures the moment comes from Frank Herbert's Dune, when Leto Atreides reveals a 15-year secret to his son, Paul. We've more immediate problems, among them, you. Me? Your mother wanted me to be the one to tell you, son. You see, you may have mentat capabilities. Paul stared at his father, unable to speak for a moment. Then, a mentat? Me? But Hawat agrees, son, it's true. But I thought mentat training had to start during infancy, and the subject couldn't be told because it might inhibit the early. He broke off, all his past circumstances coming to focus in one flashing computation. I see, he said. A day comes, the Duke said, when the potential mentat must learn what's being done. It may no longer be done to him. The mentat has to share in the choice of whether to continue or abandon the training. Some can continue, some are incapable of it. Only the potential mentat can tell this for sure about himself. Paul rubbed his chin. All the special training from Hawat and his mother, the mnemonics, the focusing of awareness, the muscle control and sharpening of sensitivities, the study of languages and nuances of voices, all of it clicked into a new kind of understanding in his mind. You'll be the Duke someday, son, his father said. A mentat Duke would be a formidable indeed. Can you decide now, or do you need more time? There was no hesitation in his answer. I'll go on with the training. Formidable indeed, the Duke murmured, and Paul saw the proud smile on his father's face. The smile shocked Paul. It had a skull look on the Duke's narrow features. Paul closed his eyes, feeling the terrible purpose reawaken within him. Perhaps being a mentat is terrible purpose, he thought. But even as he focused on this thought, his new awareness denied it. While it may be a delusion of grandeur to compare myself to the Kwisatz Haderach, the purpose of sharing this story is to illustrate the fact that sometimes self-knowledge can get in the way of useful growth. To take a biblical example, consider the man born blind in John 9. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. John 9, 2-3. The man had grown into adulthood, living in darkness, unable to see. Yet on the day his eyes are opened, he does not complain about the years spent in darkness, but praises God for being made whole. God did not worry about his years spent in darkness because they were the seedbed for salvation. The moment of the miracle transforms both the future and the past. My future certainly changed, and I knew that many changes were needed. In that moment of admission, my entire history transformed. A relative failure as a neurotypical, I was suddenly an example of success. I had already been studying what had worked for me and was working on plans to write this book and start the Tectonic School program for other young guys like me. But now I knew quite a bit more about who those guys were. I didn't plan to make a program specific to people with autism. If they are like me, they might not even know they are autistic. Rather, I plan to shape the program with the knowledge that there are reasons beyond economic and familial circumstances that cause people to fall between the cracks. As I pointed out in my chapter on the subject, in some ways, the whole world is becoming more autistic, so the remedy is for everyone. I forgot I left that line in because I had a chapter and then I took it out, a chapter on autism in the book.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know what it means to say that the whole world become more autistic.
Yeah, I wrote a little bit about it. I think I have it saved somewhere else, but it was kind of about how, like, I think autistic people have shaped so much of the means of communication, like the internet and other things like social media and algorithms and things like that, that they've kind of trained people in some ways. Like the whole like face-to-face social skills, like I think everybody has deteriorated in those to a degree in those things, that's what it was written about.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's an issue of social skills because
Yeah.
of technology.
Yeah, I think a little bit. Like I think autistic people, maybe I do say this later on, but like, there's been like people like Elon Musk or like all the like Silicon Valley and like tech sector people, so many of them are people on the spectrum. And I think part of it is like the issue of like having a difficulty with the world inspires them to create a solution, and sometimes those solutions are like, well, in recent years, like so powerful that everybody adopts them, and then it kind of just changes the way we all interact with each other, like smartphones and all that kind of stuff. So
That makes sense. Yeah.
okay. Perhaps the greatest blessing of learning of the symptoms and tendencies of people on the spectrum is coming to recognize the profound influence they can have on the world when they are given the chance. As it turns out, many of the people whose works have had an impact on me are autistic, whether they inspired me to greatness or bugged the heck out of me. J.R.R. Tolkien, the master of language, was very likely an Aspie, as is Garrison Keillor and many great thinkers like Isaac Newton and Leonardo da Vinci. Both Calvin and Servetus may have been on the spectrum, though they could never see eye to eye. But those are the success stories, the ones that made the grade. Many more were like Jack Peterson, destined for the ditch. Why is it that these people are either so high or so low? What makes the difference? The common thread is that the least of these, whether autistic or afflicted in some other way, always lose when they play by the rules. Not God's rules, though following those too closely causes a lot of trouble with the neighbors, but the world's rules, and by extension the devil's. Which begs the question, why is this the group that he tips his hand against so hard? The troubled, the weak, the downtrodden, and the infants. I think it's because he fears them. Autistics lose when they fight the agent within the arena. They have to think outside the box. They have to invest in changing the environment. In other words, they need to go tectonic. The world is set up to crush those special minds, and as the devil does, it seeks to do it right off the bat. Satan's genocidal tendencies are always aimed at infants and children. Autistics have a certain childlikeness about them that the world desperately lacks. But if they get the chance to make it to adulthood, to find a niche where they can succeed, they can change the world. The Tecton is a builder, an architect, and an engineer, a shaper and maker of worlds. Tolkien created a world that inspired the imagination of generations. Keeler created the kind of small town where all the women are strong, all the men are good-looking, and all the children are above average. They can often accomplish what others cannot because they see what others cannot. Da Vinci's sketches of currents in water seemed wrong until high-speed photography verified his vision. The eyes and ears that struggle in the superstimulus of the internet age can see clearly when the lights are too dim for the average person. It's the greatest gift of the 17th century mystic Thomas Traherne. The world is a mirror of infinite beauty, yet no man sees it. It is a temple of majesty, yet no man regards it. It is a region of light and peace, did not men disquiet it. It is the paradise of God. It is more to man since he is fallen than it was before. It is the place of angels and the gate of heaven. What Traherne describes is the wonder I have often felt when I observe the majesty of creation. Yet that sense of joy and wonder is almost constantly drowned out by incessant and droning complaints of others, who see nothing but the banal and mundane. The gaslighting subversions of Frost and Wither's objective room are particularly draining for those with a sensitive soul, something Traherne noticed as well. The first light which shined in my infancy, in its primitive and innocent clarity, was totally eclipsed, insomuch that I was fain to learn all again. If you ask me how it was all eclipsed, truly, by the customs and manners of men, which, like contrary winds, blew it out, by an innumerable company of other objects, rude, vulgar, and worthless things, that like so many loads of earth and dung did overwhelm and bury it, by the impetuous torrent of wrong desires in all others whom I saw or knew, that carried me away and alienated me from it, by a whole sea of other matters and concernments that covered and drowned it. Finally, by the evil influence of a bad education that did not foster and cherish it. What I received a small taste of, being shuffled into the cattle pen of conformity, has long been the experience of the least of these. Overwhelmed by the needs and wants of the many, those who aren't trampled are forced into the ditch by stampeding herd. Sometimes the least of these discovers a way to become something greater. They can try to make it as an agent. Jim Hedwig was the supreme example. His high school football career was decent. He learned to be part of the team, but he truly excelled at weightlifting and bodybuilding and made his way into wrestling, where he found himself betrayed. The Ultimate Warrior could body slam Andre the Giant, but he was swallowed up by the unseen intrigues of the arena. Footnote. While no one else has mentioned it officially, the bizarre story of the Ultimate Warrior makes complete and total sense when considered through the lens of a high-masking, undiagnosed autistic. He crafted a mask of muscles, persona, and makeup to protect himself from harm. End footnote. He began to question the system, getting involved in political punditry, yet once again his inability to grasp the unwritten rules led to controversy and cancellation. He finally found solace in the environment he created, in the safety of a gym and an enclave of outcasts, an artists' community, made up of the type of people he had once blamed for the warping of the world. If the least of these are to find success, they must follow a different path. The antithesis to the warrior's tale is found in Mick Foley, a man who embraced the pain and torment and learned to laugh at it. Footnote. The fact that Mick Foley's son is diagnosed as autistic is a strong indication that Mick himself is on the spectrum, corroborated by his personality and his talents. End footnote. He found success by breaking every rule. Yet he had something that the warrior did not: a healthy home, a present father, an arena in which his roots could grow strong. Something beautiful happens when those who have eyes to see and ears to hear are able to grow and flourish on the sidelines. They observe and process and create a solution. It's hard to imagine that Chris Caraba's early relationship woes were as devastating as his songs make them out to be, until you hear the shy, soft-spoken man tell the stories behind the music. Footnote: I would not have guessed that Chris Caraba is on the spectrum, but I got this confirmation of a strong second opinion from an autistic friend after watching his Rig Rundown video. He very likely has some ADHD. The gifts of good looks and the talent to sing allowed him to overcome his personal struggles, but he articulated the story of many less fortunate young men. But his story mirrors that of warriors. Being the solo act on center stage was isolating and uncomfortable, in stark contrast to the typical tale of the rising star who must emancipate himself from the fetters of his small-town peers. Caraba's true joy comes from the sense of true camaraderie and belonging within the band, with the friends who accepted him as a younger brother all those decades earlier. For those who find the cracks in the wall, the flaws in the system, the memory of early setbacks never departs. When the least of these occasionally find themselves on top of the game, they don't use their power for petty revenge. They direct their energies into cultivation and revitalization of the system. Caraba transformed the spectacle of the rock club into a liturgy of brotherhood, gladly pointing the microphone to the voiceless crowd. Elon Musk would rarely be thought of as the least, yet he is driven by something few people understand. The richest man in the world does not care about money, but he saw that money was what ruled the world. So he found a way to get more of it than anyone else. Then he could attract others who would help fulfill his goals. Few people truly care about colonizing Mars like Elon does, but they do care about getting paid. Many thought he was foolish to spend so much buying Twitter, but the cost in dollars was insignificant in comparison to what he had already lost. No price is too high for him to complete his other mission, to destroy the mind virus that robbed him of a relationship with his son. John, the host of the podcast Christianity on the Spectrum, thinks it is unwise to project a particular diagnosis on anyone within the biblical narrative, a reasonable caution. But as I have continued to read the stories of the Bible through the lens of my own experience, I discovered newfound sympathies for many characters whose behaviors are used to condemn them. As I followed the strict chronology of Genesis, I always considered what stories and experiences each individual had at their disposal, and I am often baffled as to how they were supposed to avoid the mistakes of their novel circumstances. The typical preachers and scholars tend to assume that Eve, Cain, and Noah, or Abraham, Isaac, and Esau knew something that the text simply never reveals. The same assumption has blindsided me throughout my life. The question, why, is met with derision by those in the know. This is not to say that every character in the biblical corpus is autistic, but my frailty gives me pause when the study notes quickly condemn. Yet Jesus identified with the least of these, and his criteria has caused me to evaluate these stories in a new light. If there is anyone who embodies the Spirit of Christ while living as the least of these, it is Joseph, the son of Jacob. Joseph seems oblivious to the problems he stirs up. His lack of social awareness is evident not only in how he tattles on his brother's sins, but in the way he announces his dreams and visions to his whole family. Potiphar seems flummoxed at his inability to protect himself from the schemes of his master's wife. Although Joseph asks the cupbearer to remember him when he is restored, the young man fails to make an impression. Were his words dismissed due to a discordance between the urgency of the message and the unstressed tone of voice? When Joseph is placed in the position of power, the emotional distress of his brothers does not convince him of their sincerity. His time in prison has taught him something about the nature of selfish men who speak kindly before stabbing their masters in the back. Instead, he subjects his brothers to a series of tests, forcing them to act in ways that reveal the changes in their inner motives before he believes that they have changed. The other side of Joseph is that keen mind that sees the path to safety through the quagmire of administrative details. The engineer who orchestrates a plan to circumvent the myopic vision of selfish men to store away the seeds of a new creation. When he goes head to head, he loses every battle against his brothers, his master's wife, and the isolation of the prison. But when Joseph controls the arena, he is undefeated. It is Joseph who saves the world. Yet he does not seek revenge. He does not assume that his brothers were evil, though they truly should have known better. He tells them that what they planned for evil, God had intended for good. Joseph ends up at the top of the heap. Does this happy ending repair his past, like the years of the man born blind? No, it doesn't need to. Joseph was healed from his sorrows much earlier. As Jesus tells his disciples how to tell the difference between the sheep and the goats, he speaks from the mouth of Joseph in a long-forgotten text of the Second Temple period, rediscovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls. I was alone, and God came to help me. I was in weakness, and the Lord showed his concern for me. I was in prison, and the Savior acted graciously in my behalf. I was in bonds, and he loosed me. From the Testament of Joseph. This apocryphal text is confirmed by the scripture, and there he was in prison, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love. Genesis 39:20-21. When no one remembered Joseph, the Lord still did. But as Jesus has brought us into his body, he has commissioned our hands and feet. We do not always succeed, but he still does. In the depths of my uncertainty, 40 years since the day of my birth, after 40 years of wandering in a semi-arid wilderness, in a valley often obscured by shadows and darkness, a bright ray of light shot forth. My wife presented me with a letter, a collection of messages from family and friends, some old and some new, telling me what I had remembered as a legacy of failures had not gone unseen and was viewed quite differently from those around me. I had begun to doubt the meaning behind kind words and friendly faces, as disappointment, misunderstanding, and betrayal never seemed to follow far behind. Faith that flies in the face of overwhelming evidence is not faith, but delusion. Yet I tried to hold on to the evidence of goodness as best I could. The testimonies of my friends gave me the boost to carry on. Reading the gratitude for my contributions transformed my memories of the past from murky darkness to hopeful light. The lock on the door was opening, and I could see the path leading forward. I don't know exactly where this life will lead me. Who knows how many people will read these words or what effect the ideas on these pages will have. What I do know is that when I was hungry, he gave me food. When I was thirsty, he gave me something to drink. When I was naked, he clothed me. And when I was a stranger, he welcomed me in. When I was in prison, he visited me. And now he has set me free. He did so through the hands and feet and kind invitations of those whom he had called out of the darkness. He's given me a mission to find those who are still imprisoned and bring them to the light. But I can't do it head on. I can't match wits with the devil or become the ultimate warrior. I need to work alongside the Tecton, who is crafting an everlasting temple, a new heaven and a new earth. But before that work is finished, He is inviting us to tame the wilderness, clear the ground, and to start raising tents. Will you join me?
Yeah, that's a beautiful final chapter, and yeah, I
Thank you.
got some words. I guess
What, what do you think?
wisdom.
What do you think of my diagnosis of Joseph?
So I kind of take a position that we don't. I mean, I think psychology is in its infancy stage, so I don't
Mhm.
think that psychological science is the same type of science that something like physics or even biology is, just
Yeah.
because it's so new. So I don't necessarily know if we have reliable ways of diagnosing autism. But in general, I'm more skeptical of the predictive validity of psychological theories than I am of other scientific theories.
Yeah.
So I would say I'm kind of agnostic about it. Like I really don't know because um I just I don't necessarily know if psychology has developed to a point where it has a really good understanding of what something like autism is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, plus there's a big problem. So I mean, I don't know. This is like the big debate, I guess, of people like between having a medical model and like having autism as a diagnosis, or like I guess I don't know what they call it, like a social model or whatever, or like the neurodivergence model, because autism is kind of like a diagnosis that you only get through having like negative symptoms. So it's like if you don't have a lot of the symptoms or whatever, you wouldn't be diagnosed. But that doesn't mean that your brain doesn't still work in a very different way from a typical person. I mean, and so like that's even the thing. I could be like, oh, well, I didn't know there was anything really. I mean, I felt like there was something different about me for a long time, but I could get by in a lot of situations like any normal person could. I thought there was something wrong with me in the sense of like, why does this stuff that seems like not a big deal for other people, like it's so draining on me, it's so difficult for me to figure out what to say, how to act, or whatever. Um, so I mean, I think in that regard, it's almost like uh, so there's a debate about like whether somebody would be autistic or if you want to use a different category like neurodivergent. Because if somebody's neurodivergent and they get like a lot of support and a good upbringing in their childhood, they might not have the negative symptoms that people associate with like autism.
Yeah. And I will say another thing is also so another problem here is that what is considered socially atypical um, one of the problems with descriptive psychology in general when we're talking about what's considered um, sort of neurodivergent is well, and I know this is going to sound postmodern, but like I'm curious what you think of this critique that basically what's considered typical social cues is culturally contingent to some
Mm-hmm.
extent, and so
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I don't mind. Like honestly, it's not like postmodernism is all aspects of it are totally wrong. Like before I even knew anything about like postmodernism, I think that I had to kind of internalize the fact of like nobody no two people are ever getting like the same feedback from like the system or whatever. Like we have to all filter everything through our like personal experiences, and so I always have to be like, who is the person that's speaking to me, and what do they mean when they're saying the thing that they're saying? I can't assume that like I have the same understanding. Like me thinking that way helped me to cope with dealing with other people. Um, because that's the thing. You'll find people have like arguments online, and they'll argue about these. They'll use the same set of words, but if you really look at like how they act and what their beliefs are, they're talking about totally different concepts using the same words. And like that's a thing like modernity doesn't really, or like in the objective way, you can't really account for that so much. So you definitely do need to have some sort of a perspectival knowledge or understanding of other people. So I definitely think, yeah, there's something to that, because
Yeah, so what do you think about that in relation to the autism diagnosis specifically? Like, do you think that means that how you diagnose autism is inherently going to be limited?
yeah, okay, so like here's an example. Let's say like, okay, 'cause, like people will be like, oh, there's very low autism in the Amish community, and it's like, yeah, but all Amish people are kind of like autistic people compared to, if you throw them in our modern culture, or whatever. I think that in some ways it's like we have probably had a lot lower. I have a theory that we have a lot lower diagnosed in the past. Obviously, we didn't understand it as much. We would only really diagnose people that had really, really severe circumstances. But I think a lot of people that maybe had like a milder degree of autism, they got by just fine because they would find their way into like a job that suited them well, like maybe the science and engineering types, or I think a lot of the people that work in the skilled trades, their hands, and people would just be like, oh, he's kind of a quiet guy, he's an introvert or whatever, he's not like people might think they were a little bit odd or weird, but they had a much easier path to getting a normal life. They didn't need to get a diagnosis. And like I think like on Amish communities a very similar thing. Or I think like Yosef has said it's a similar thing in like a lot of the Orthodox Jewish communities, because there is actually such a clear and agreed upon like social language. It's easier for somebody who maybe is lacking some skill in picking that up um to find their way and fit in and adjust. Like maybe it takes them a little longer, but they can still get there. Like our problem is that everything is like you can, it's like you tell like little kids like you can be whatever you want. Like they don't get like any boundaries at all. It's so confusing. Like it's impossible. It's impossible to learn social rules and norms if we don't have any that we all agree on.
Yeah, and this is actually, I don't know if this is directly related to what you're talking about, but I think this is a point that what's his name? The Daily Wire guy, Michael Knowles has made.
Mm-hmm.
Um where it's like, so you can find it's really difficult to find something that you enjoy if you have either one option or if you have an infinite number of options. And it's really easy to find if you have multiple options that are bounded. Um, and so, like, I don't know if that's directly what we related, but this idea of like an infinite amount of like social cues, um, I was just trying to tie that point into that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's like okay, because if you look at the overlap of people who are on the spectrum in like the trans community and stuff like that, or like whatever, any of that, it's like the fact of people saying like, oh, you're a boy and that means you'll grow up to be a man, and these are the things, like those boundaries were like very helpful for those people. Like maybe somebody um like there's like a more susceptibility to the that openness of infinite options that is much more difficult for like autistic people. So I guess you could say the fact that we have so many more people being like formally diagnosed, some of it is because of better um, diagnostic criteria, but I think some of it is due to the fact that like we have a less coherent, more confusing social environment that like our modern culture is there. It's kind of like the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is a canary in the coal mine again?
Oh, so the canary, so coal miners used to bring canaries in little bird cages, because they're very well, because they're so small. If there was like poisonous gas in the tunnels, like carbon monoxide, the canary would die with like a much lower amount. So you like bring it down and be like, oh crap, the canary died. That means we need to get out of here. But they would die sooner than people would. So that's what they used them for.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wonder, is anyone Not that many people in chat. I wonder, are you streaming on your YouTube channel as well?
Yeah, I'm on mine. There's one person watching on mine. There's 0 people watching on Jacob's. So
Is there any comments on yours? Because I see comments on Jacob's, but not on your end.
I just see the one from Jay Daw in your comments. I don't see any comments after that.
What does he say?
He said the AI makes a good editor for this book.
Yeah. Wait. You did you use AI?
No,
Oh.
I mean,
Okay.
I tried to have it tell me on some other things. I've tried to have it edit, like tell me what to cut out so that this is more streamlined. But
And do you think? May I bring a sort of tangential point? Um, is that okay?
yes,
Um, so do you think that the educational system has a problem dealing with people on the spectrum? Because of the fact that the public education system designed to. So, to my understanding, the public education system, as we know it, came out of the Industrial Revolution, and it was meant to
hmm,
make factory workers, right?
yeah,
Um, and so, I think that model might just not be the type of thing conducive to people on the spectrum, because people on the spectrum are not going to generally be factory workers, to my understanding.
yeah, probably. I mean, it's like I don't even think you could say like even it's morphed beyond something like that. Like I don't think public school would even make good factory workers now. Like now it's like a weird, I don't know, glorified babysitting with ideologies or something. Um, but I mean, yeah, I don't think it's probably doing good for a lot of people.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
So you would say it's not unique to autistic people?
no, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's as good as it used to be for anybody. For anybody, you know, I think like probably our parents' generation and older, it's like you got a real education, but now it's like they say like kids don't even know how to read in like 6th grade and stuff. Like that's crazy.
I wonder if that's related to this issue that you mentioned of boundaries and setting boundaries, because like
Yeah, probably
to what extent has postmodernism, to the extent that it's influenced the educational system, um,
a
led
lot.
to a lot of this ending of boundaries?
Yeah, I think it has a lot because it's like you can't make any judgments about anything. Like I don't know, it's weird. Like
Sorry.
um like yeah, I mean if I look back in my own past, it was like it was good that I had boundaries and stuff. Like and then that I had a social environment of like my family and church that what it gave me enough like rigidity and support to know like oh there are rules and if I follow the rules or whatever I don't have to worry about like being kicked out of here. Now, sometimes people would still hurt me because people are unpredictable and I'm more sensitive than maybe the average person in some ways. So it's not like it was perfect, but it was like a better environment. It was an environment where more or less it's like you could hold people accountable to the truth. Be like everybody's supposed to tell the truth. And if somebody lies, that's bad. And you can say you lied and that's bad. Um, Whereas, like, I think there's a lot of weird gaslighting stuff that happens now, and that's really confusing to like somebody on the spectrum. With
Yeah,
like,
that makes sense.
yeah,
And I mean, as Jordan Peterson has taught us, you can't. There's no such thing as being irreligious. Everyone's gonna follow some religious dogma, and the
hmm,
question is, which dogma are you gonna follow? And if you follow a dogma, which glorifies, I mean, there's a sense in which neutrality inherently is favoring the false side, because when you lift the falsehood on par with the truth, then you've already made it so that way you're giving falsehood more respect than it deserves. So it's like neutrality isn't really neutral. It's sort of inherently elevating the truth above the status where it belongs. Does that make sense?
hmm, yeah. Sorry, say it again.
It's like neutrality isn't really neutral because
Hmm,
it's elevating falsehood above where falsehood belongs.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no yeah, and and definitely like yeah. Once you get into that relativistic mode of like your truth and my truth. Like that, I think is like so confusing too. I think because it's weird, and sometimes I wonder, like, I have this thought of, okay, because sometimes I do have like uh good instincts about people in some ways. I feel like it's like maybe, or maybe like, and especially because now I have kids and stuff. And like my oldest daughter's like pretty clearly like on the spectrum, and she will like hold my wife like super accountable to like every single promise she makes, of like, you said this exactly or whatever. And then I always have to tell my wife, I'm like, look, you have to really just be super clear. You can't make like vague promises or anything like that. It's so confusing to her. And I think that like what happens a lot of times, maybe when you're a young or you're a kid, is it's like, you because people have like the thought of like autistic people and children as being like really rude. I think sometimes it might be because they actually do observe more than a typical person in like seeing where somebody is inconsistent. But if it's in like an adult in authority, and you'd be like, no, I'm not being rude. I'm an adult. You have to listen to me or whatever. Like, you'll get punished for calling them out. And then I think that, if you get stung a bunch in that way, or, because that's the thing. It's like if you call people, I mean, this is like the Joseph story, he's telling his father, like, oh, my brothers are doing a bad job of taking care of the flocks and stuff. And everybody hates him and gets mad at him. If you do that enough and people don't believe you, then you eventually, I think, start to rely on things that are more concrete. Like I think that the black and white thinking, or like the way that autistic people tend to be drawn to like mathematics and logic and things like that, is because those are actually things that they can use to hold their own, like in relationship with other people, in a way that they can't just like hold people to their word the same way, because they're missing, the unwritten rules or whatever. Because I think a lot of times those unwritten rules are covering up bad stuff. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And one of the things that I would like to look more into what John Vervaeke's ecology of practices are, because I think perhaps this notion of unwritten rules and this notion of tacit knowledge, um, I've heard Vervaeke talk about it, and so I know he has a whole ecology of practices, but the only practice that I am familiar with from him is meditation. So I would no, I Jan God for some reason wants me to read Dan Dennett. I have no clue why. But what maybe I should look more into what Vervaeke says about relevance realization in the ecology of practices. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know. I mean, I've listened to some bunch of Vervaeke and like blurry things. I went through like half of what's it that his awakening from the meaning crisis thing, but then I felt like he didn't do a good job when he got to the Reformation, and then I didn't care as much with what happened after that.
Okay, yeah. Well, and yeah, I was just curious if you knew anything about his ecology of practices, because I've heard about it, but I haven't really looked into it too deep.
I think I've heard him say that. So in my newer writing that I have not shared so much yet, one of the things that he said that really did stick out to me was him talking about how people form their beliefs on the basis of credible testimony. We say we use like facts and logic and all this stuff, but those are actually like the rational explanations that we give for the things we already believe. And so it's like, there's all this study and evidence showing that like somebody will be like like they'll either be religious, or they might be like an atheist who like believes in science based on the people in their life who are credible. So if you have parents, we'll say, who are religious, if they are faithful people, you will be religious. If they are hypocrites, you will reject their faith. And then if you find like scientific atheist people that are credible, you will adopt their beliefs instead. And I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff about that, because that really resonates with like, oh, Well, that's kind of the problem, is that there's a lot of people that are not very, they don't have a lot of integrity, a lot of credibility, a lot of um, faithfulness in the way in between what they say they believe and the ways that they actually live their life. And that's like, oh yeah, that's the thing that makes life confusing for like an autistic person or something. And but also everybody, but especially if you are on the spectrum.
Yeah. So maybe, I don't know. I mean, so maybe a practice to that is just meditating on the perspectival nature of so much of our understanding.
Yeah, so I think there's two things. I think on the one hand, so I say like my mechanism is that I am very much like I've gotten place where it's like, okay, if somebody says something and it hurts me or offends me, I try to always be like, I don't think they were intentionally trying to hurt me. What, and then I try to be like more understanding of like why they did that or whatever. I give them the benefit of the doubt. Like that's my practice as like a listener. But then I try to be very clear with my speech and my actions and all those things so that I'm not as confusing of a person to other people, you know? So it's like I try to live that way, but I also want to assume better on people who aren't as aware of like just the confusingness of how their speech and actions often don't line up.
Yeah. And another thing also, so in terms of autism, so I would say, like I said, I'm agnostic about your perspective on the Joseph diagnosis, and that's not. I don't take that personally. It's just
No,
like
that's right.
it's. What was that?
Yeah. No, that's fine. Yeah. It's not, I
It,
mean,
it,
it's not a lot to go on. It's just like, it's almost more of like, oh, if you take that idea and that framework, I think it makes more sense of some aspects of the story rather
yeah.
than really being able to say, yes, he definitely was or wasn't. But
Yeah, I'm just kind of agnostic about it, but yeah, that makes sense. But so on top of the, yeah, that makes sense about the justice. Sorry, another thing about autism I'm going to say is gender differences in autism. I think are an issue, like because I think a lot of male behavior can be pathologized as autism just
mhm,
because that um like Jordan Peterson says, men tend to be more interested in things and women tend to be more interested in people, just
yeah.
statistically speaking. So do you think that like that's an issue, another issue with how our society diagnoses autism?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the thing of like John, the guy with the Christianity on the Spectrum podcast. He's talked a lot about how like basically like because they always say like, oh, autism is more prevalent in males, and it's like, oh no, we just understand what it looks like in males a lot more. Like there's a lot of autistic females too. Their autism, the way that it manifests, is much more socially acceptable. So like they don't get a diagnosis. In some ways, they don't need a diagnosis. Like, I mean, that's kind of the problem. Some of the problem with the like medical model is that you don't you only give like help and support to the people that really are messed up like bad or who are really failing, and there's like a whole lot of other people that are just doing life in like a really difficult way. um so I think, yeah, I mean, I think the thing, yeah, it does manifest very different in girls, and that's a big problem of the difference of understanding it. um
Yeah, I don't know. Have you seen the interview between what's his name, Simon Baron Cohen and Jordan Peterson?
yeah,
Um, yeah,
it was pretty good.
yeah, because I watched part of the interview. I don't remember everything that was said, but from my memory, he was saying that things that are associated with autism are just generally speaking statistically more masculine type ways of being.
Yeah.
And if my memory serves me correctly, then a point that I'm thinking about now is like, then how are we going to diagnose girls with autism in general if it manifests differently?
I mean, well, I mean, I guess in some ways it's like, okay, well, one thing is, do you need a diagnosis if you're not having problems? Like, I mean, this is sort of my idea of like, oh, the problem is not necessarily, okay, what did I say? I'll put this back. Okay, so you're a young guy. What I've noticed from like, so I've seen a lot of people online maybe people that are my age, like millennials and older, talking about who got a late diagnosis versus like people that get an earlier diagnosis of like Gen Z is like, for me, I'm like, oh, I'm really glad that I didn't know and that I tried to do a lot of difficult things like that normal people would do, because even though it was hard, it helped me become competent and I accomplished a lot. Whereas like a lot of the younger people are just wanting accommodation for things that it's stunting like what they could accomplish. Like because it's not like it's not like a thing where you can never do things. It's a thing that makes it like sometimes more difficult to learn how to do things or how to master things. So if you know you're on the spectrum, like I know Temple Grandin said like her mom or whatever basically like pushed her really hard because she was like, it's going to be harder for you to figure out how to do things, so you need more pushing, you need more effort. Where now it's like we say, oh, you have a condition, we're not going to expect as much of you. So that's not a good, like, so that's even the whole thing of like, I don't even know if it's necessarily good to have diagnosis in a situation where having a diagnosis means that your opportunities are limited and you're getting accommodations that keep you from trying. Now, if we had a situation that identified people as being on the spectrum and then catered like specifically to them actually being like as successful as possible, which might be in a totally different way than what like a typical person, measures as success, then I think it would be probably more important to figure out some of that stuff. I think we do have some of that stuff where it's like, if you're really into like STEM things, it's like the Department of Defense is going to be like tracking you down, and they're going to be like, don't worry about trying to fit in here. Just do all this math all day long. And we're just going to praise you for doing great at math stuff, like, so you can be like in a separate track because that skill is like identified. But we
Yeah.
don't do that with like all the other types of people. Cause it's like, I would probably be more of like the theater autism person. It's like, nobody's finding and identifying and pushing people in that direction the same way.
Well, out of curiosity, are you formally diagnosed yourself?
So I have like a real diagnosis of ADHD, but then I watched a bunch of testimonies of people that were late diagnosed, and that's when I realized like, oh wow, that's a big it like I definitely, it was like the first time I ever heard people that explained like what was going on in my head. And I know with like, especially with that, like with adults and stuff, it's like the self-diagnosis is pretty widely accepted because it's not about like I can do most things. It's just they're really draining and I feel confused all the time and life is difficult. But it's hard to get a diagnosis for that when you like, the way they do it. So, whatever, I'll say I'm self-identified, but I definitely, yeah, it's definitely like that's the way my brain works, even if I don't have like symptoms that would be measurable.
Yeah, that
You know,
makes sense. And I'm not necessarily judging you for that. I was just
no,
that's the way I myself am.
yeah,
It's just I was just curious if you were formally diagnosed because
mm,
I think I agree with you. I don't necessarily know if it matters if you're formally diagnosed, but the question is for females who do have issues, how do we determine what is autism and what is not? And I don't necessarily know if you I don't necessarily know if you know like how that would go about.
um, well, I don't know. I mean, in some sense, so it's like, okay, well, I have a head start with my daughters by knowing like, oh, well, if I have it, they might have it too. Um, I don't know. It's tricky because like I think a lot of it is like there is a gullibility of it, and like people don't, like autistic women, they don't offend anybody. Oh, like, okay, here's a really bad difference or a really bad situation. Like autistic males are more likely to be perpetrators of sexual assault because they misread a social romantic situation, right? So they might try to kiss somebody or do something because they're misreading the signs. But autistic women are way more likely than normal to be victims, because when they misread the signs, they're basically giving somebody permission to do stuff. Like, I heard some pretty rough stories about that. Like, they don't understand what they're agreeing to. If a guy's like trying to be smooth, I mean, this is part of the thing of like, nobody asks people on dates anymore because of like all the trouble that we've had with this stuff. But like a lot of autistic women, like I can see, it's like, oh yeah, they just probably blended in. They were probably like wives that husbands didn't have a lot of complaints about, and that probably is some of the like male female difference. Like, I think like autistic women are probably like easier, especially maybe when there was more, I don't know, what do you say, like gendered roles in culture. It was probably easier for autistic women to succeed in the female roles than it might have been for men to succeed in the male roles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you would say, so because of the fact that it's less hard for there to be social problems from autistic women, that makes it harder to diagnose women with autism
I think
inherently.
so. I think so. Well, because here's the thing: women don't ever say what they mean. They always say all this like confusing woman speech. But then it's like, if a woman's autistic, she's probably more likely to be direct and to like say what she means and not be offended at a man, or not misread. So like, this is the problem of like, this is the problem. This is the fight I've had with my wife like a million times. Don't forget about my tone of voice. I don't know what my tone of voice is. Listen to the words that I'm saying. I'm saying the exact words that I want you to hear. Those are the words. The words are what matters. Forget the tone of voice. But then she says, your tone of voice said something else. And it's like, you're doing the exact opposite of what I asked because of my tone of voice. Like, that's so confusing. So it's like, that's a more typical woman dealing with like an autistic man. Like, that's the problem that you would have. But if you have an autistic woman that's just going to take the man at his word and not worry herself with like tone of voice, well, that's going to be like a smoother relationship for most people, you know, whether they're both autistic or just the woman is. It's like, you're going to have, so I don't know. There's some like differences of the like male female issues in that way.
But so you would say you don't know how to diagnose a woman with autism because of that?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's like if they're more like, well, I mean, there is things, there is other things like if they have a lot of special interests and obsessions. A lot of times it's like things that are more like socially acceptable though, like all the girls that are obsessed with horses, or like books, or like that draw a lot and stuff like that, or theater. If they're obsessed with theater, they could be obsessed with fashion. Like people don't get bothered by girls being obsessed with things, and especially if they're like girly things. So I don't know. There are things. I mean, I don't know. If you ever see like Love on the Spectrum?
No, but I'm probably going to now.
Yeah. I mean, there you'll see a good mix of.
Actually, I may have seen
Guys.
like an episode of that. I may have
Yeah.
seen like an episode of that. Isn't that on YouTube?
It's on Netflix. I'm sure there's like clips and things on YouTube.
I think I saw like a clip of it on YouTube or something like that.
Yeah. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's interesting for sure. Like, and it's also like due to the like severity and stuff. It makes it different, but well, I think I probably got to wrap things up. So
Okay. It was good talking to you.
yeah, it was good talking. All right. See you later.
See you later. Bye.